Thanks everyone for coming out here tonight. So this is an event with Startup Grind. It's a startup networking organization that started out in Silicon Valley. This will be the 10-year reunion coming up in 2020. So now they've grown to about 500 chapters around the world, and we're all doing different fireside chat and panel events every month, and then we come together. There's a global conference in February out in Silicon Valley where it's about 5,000 people come to that conference and hear from. Last year there were speakers from Airbnb and Airtable, some of the big startup companies and investment groups there. That it was a really cool event to come out to and connect with other all the different chapters from around the world. We have a couple sponsors and partners, including Rex, who's the corporate credit card for startups and helps companies that wouldn't necessarily be able to get a credit card from a bank, be able to get it through their program, as well as Heroku, who helps with the development. Is a platform for your making development easier for founders and startups to build their technology on top of. And some of our partners include Cross, who's doing the media and media and marketing for Startup Grind with us. Prepare for VC is a consulting company I have that helps startups through the fundraising process. Then we have a couple of development partners like Zyk Technologies and 9 Series, who help bring a startup-friendly approach to hiring outsourced development teams. And we have a partner network with Treble, which is it's an application and platform that lets you connect and share your wish list of who you're looking to connect with, and enables you to make introductions through their platform. And we're an organization on there that anybody can join and connect with the members through that platform. And we also partner with places like Holt, who provided the nice space for us here tonight, and a couple different co-working spaces around Boston to host our monthly Startup Grind events. So yeah, really excited you all came out here tonight, and excited to have Rohre here as our featured speaker from Female Founders Alliance. And it's excited to share her story, how right now she's both the VP of operations at the Female Founders Alliance, which is an amazing organization we're going to learn about, as well as she's a professional ultimate frisbee fighter. So if you want to give a quick introduction and background, and then we can jump into some of the discussion here, and then I'm going to leave plenty of time for questions from the audience at the end as well.
Cool. Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming out, and thank you, Jason and Startup Grind for having us. I was just coaching at the national championships this past weekend, so I have lost my voice a little bit, so I apologize for that. Like Jason mentioned, I'm now the VP of operations at the Female Founders Alliance, and we focus on supporting women and non-binary founders of venture scale businesses. And we do that by connecting founders with resources that they need to go out and raise capital, or kind of grow their business and be successful in addressing a really significant market. And my path to being here really starts with my own entrepreneurial journey. So I started a business with my siblings while I was a freshman in college in the ultimate frisbee space. So there's a strong overlap in my world between entrepreneurship and my athletic career. And we started the company. I have 3 older brothers and a younger sister, and we started the company while I was in college, and then kind of spent the first chunk of my career doing that, and then recently joined FFA about a year ago.
What type of startup were you building with the Ultimate Frisbee?
It was so Ultimate Frisbee apparel. So we did custom team uniforms and had an online store. So more of like, I was working alongside my siblings, so it was a family business. So all of us working together, to help ultimate players, perform their best on the Frisbee field.
Great. And then on the, so as, Female Founder Alliance, you said, was basically an organization to build up and help female and non-binary founders. How did it get started, and how did that idea sort of form and turn into where you guys are today?
To the magical world it is now.
Yeah.
So our CEO and founder Leslie, had a kind of great trajectory in startups and in tech, and had kind of the right business degree, and went out to raise venture capital for her own education technology startup. And despite kind of being prepared for a big challenge, like she knew that it was going to be really hard, she knew that she was going to encounter a lot of challenge, like she went out to raise, and kind of her analogy that she uses is she was walking around in this dark room, and she just needed somebody to kind of turn the lights on for her. Right. She didn't want somebody to give her a handout or treat her any differently. She just needed to know what she needed to know. And so she reached out, and really, like, FFA started as a Facebook group that she created, where she was connecting with other CEOs and founders to find out if she was the only one that was experiencing this challenge. And as she started reaching out, kind of lo and behold, she was not the only one. And that was about 2 years ago. So in the ensuing 2 years, she started running events and connecting with investors and building this community that has now grown to about 600 founders who are supported by about 7,000 followers and supporters and investors and partners who all kind of collaborate. We kind of organize them around collaborating to support those founders in succeeding. So ultimately, she did not keep running her ed tech company. She shut it down and transitioned to working on FFA full time.
Great. And then so now, obviously, it started as a Facebook group, but now, how does somebody get involved in the organization, and what does it mean to be one of the FFA founders?
Yeah, so we do kind of a broad range of different programming, and at its most inclusive, we run events that are open to all. And those events, we just ran one last night in New York, where we brought in investors and founders and other kind of business vertical experts, and connected people one-on-one. So we set up meetings for founders with investors that they can go in and have a face-to-face conversation about their business, get some feedback, and then also connect founders with each other. So obviously, some of you may know or are experiencing the loneliness of starting a company and being a founder. So as part of our events, we also bring in founders who have successfully raised, and kind of create a forum and a platform for people to connect one-on-one. So that's on the inclusive end, where anybody can attend. And then we also have a very selective accelerator that we run. And that's really geared towards just serving 8 companies. And so we just wrapped that up. And that was a national industry agnostic accelerator. It's called Ready, Set, Raise. And that's really kind of the classic accelerator model. And so those are kind of the 2 ends of the spectrum of how we serve founders. And then in between, we have other fireside chats like this one, where we bring in kind of influencers and connect people to help them succeed.
And how did you get involved with the organization?
I was working in the nonprofit sector for about a year prior to joining FFA, and I was working for an amazing organization called Girl Rising that does global girls education. Yep. And I loved that work, but as an entrepreneur myself, kind of found myself just missing a part of my own skill set in the work I was doing. And so I kind of had that realization, and then started networking and got connected to our CEO, Leslie, and met her for coffee, and was like, oh, this is perfect. As an athlete, I've always been really deeply impacted by the communities of women that I've been a part of, and those have been sports teams for the most part. And So I was really excited about the opportunity to kind of connect these two parts of me, where I get to bring my entrepreneurial experience and also support women and create community where women can succeed.
Yeah, that sounds like a great
It's like the
opportunity.
perfect marriage,
right?
yeah.
Perfect mix. So what's it? Obviously, so now you have sort of still two pretty large roles. Like, what's it like? Balancing your role with Female Founders Alliance with your ultimate team.
Yeah, it is definitely a challenge sometimes. So my kind of ultimate, maybe I should tell a little. Ultimate Frisbee is a team sport. I don't know if you all are familiar. Raise your hand if you know what ultimate is. Does anybody know? Okay, a couple people. All right, so it's a team sport, and you play 7 to a side. And it's kind of a mix of like American football and basketball. So you have to pass the Frisbee back and forth and score. So it's a team sport. And I started playing in middle school in Seattle. I live in Seattle. And I kind of rapidly became obsessed with the sport and just loved everything about the community and the sport itself. And so I've been playing for about 20 years now. And in that time have been on like 6 or 7 national teams, starting with the junior national team. And now just got the role to coach the mixed national team at the World Championships next year. So I've kind of like been involved at the highest levels of the sport for a long time. And Ultimate is a small but mighty sport. So we're still, it's growing really quickly. So it's still possible to kind of have a full-time job and be fully dedicated to that.
It's relatively new that it became like, or they even had the professional level.
Yeah. So actually one of the businesses that I run with my siblings, or that I own with my siblings, is the professional franchise in Seattle called the Seattle Cascades. So that is part of what I do. So I'm kind of able to like pack in the different divisions and different aspects of the sport happen at different points in the year. So like, this past winter I was coaching a college team, and so that happens from like January through April or May, and then the professional season starts, and then my club team picks up, and so kind of I'm able to like piece it all together.
Yeah, that sounds great. So do you ever, or do you ever like work or play against other founders on the field that like, you come across and bring them into Female Founders Alliance?
I haven't had that happen as much lately, but I need to try harder.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
So in I guess you have a wide spectrum of events to the Accelerator program, but with the companies you guys work with, what are some of the biggest challenges they're facing that they come in and like look for support from the community?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things, like sort of in the most obvious sense, is just access to capital, right? So people who are coming into the FFA community are looking for investors or looking for customers, like they want to grow. And I would say that one of the things that has become really clear to us as we build our programming, as we connect with more founders, is just that it's not just access to those individuals, but it's also the information for how to navigate. That's all right. Do you need more water? No. Okay. So both the actual like face-to-face interaction with someone, with an investor, but also the information that equips them to successfully navigate that relationship. So that's why like the one-on-one work that we do at our events is so important, because people are able to kind of talk to other founders, learn like, okay, what are investors actually looking for? Like, what do they care about when when they're looking at investing in a company? And there's so many different dissections and different types of investors, and so we really find that like providing people with all the information they need. Like, there are amazing founders out there. There are amazing companies. They just need a little bit of extra information on what investors are looking for to be able to go out and position themselves correctly. Like, there's all this great data that talks about how capital efficient women are, right? Like for every dollar invested, they're generating double the revenue. They're really gritty, right? Like the female founders in our community have problem solved like every which way to make something happen. And so they're really great investments, and a lot of times they're just missing this piece of information around how to talk about it and how to present it to investors in a way that is going to be compelling.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I'd seen, or I went to a talk last year with Kevin O'Leary, and he was talking about like even just the way, or the goals and milestones that they put on the, people put on the pitch deck. Like the female founders in his portfolio were much more conservative on what they promised to investors, whereas like most of the male entrepreneurs in there were just going with like ridiculous,
everybody wants the hockey stick, right?
stick curves, but it's interesting. You've seen some of those other, other areas that you guys can come in and help like figure out, where they should be showcasing or what they should be showcasing and how they can pitch to different investors and basically tell their story in the right way.
But a lot of times like the core business pieces are all there. Like,
right.
It's a great business. It's profitable or more profitable than comparable companies. Like, and it's just a matter of like, okay, how are you talking about this, and are you positioning it correctly for the investor to understand?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what is that, or through, basically through your Accelerator program, like how do you, there's probably a lot of applications you guys are filtering down to find those 8 startups you work with. What are the main things you're looking for in that process?
So for us, we were really looking for, like our program really focuses on just those 8 companies. It's a 6-week program, and it's purely focused on the pitch. So it's really all about that storytelling piece of like, how do you position this? How do you, talk about your business in a way that's going to be compelling to investors?
Right.
And so we're looking for, we did have a lot of applications. It was like all of July I spent in a conference room interviewing people and reading applications. But it was also, it was like sad to be inside for all of July. But it was a really great way to spend my time, to get to connect with so many founders. So we're looking specifically for people who do have all those pieces in place of like a business that works, they've got some amount of traction, that kind of demonstrates that their business model works and they're on the right track. And our goal really for the Accelerator is to help them get that first round of investment. So most people we were looking at, okay, we want them to be able to sustain themselves for at least 6 months. So we look for kind of the cash in the bank that's going to allow them to continue. And then also just being at that stage where the business is in good shape and they're kind of have the team around them to be able to go out and spend time fundraising. Because they can't just drop everything about the business and turn over to fundraise.
And what are, I know this is like, relatively new program you guys launched, but what are some of the, businesses that have come out of that?
So this last cohort, so I joined FFA about in January, so 11 months ago. And so I wasn't a part of the first cohort, but this second cohort that we did had amazing companies. There's a sexual wellness company out of the Bay Area who's kind of working. They're like, okay, we want to create the calm for sexual wellness and kind of destigmatize everything about sex. So they're trying to find this like cool intersection of erotic information and like educational information. So that's one really interesting company. And then on the other end, we also have like an auto warranty business that was in the cohort. And that founder, would always get on stage and joke about like, all right, who's fired up to talk about warranties? It's like you got the sex company, and then on the other end, like very boring business, and then yet like she is just cranking her, like she is generating millions and millions of revenue, kind of without doing anything, right? She's just like found this market and like cut out some intermediaries and built like a very defensible business that is in a lot of ways like not sexy, and yet investors hear that and they're like, oh, like that is kind of sexy. So those are kind of like two very different, and that company honestly is in Portland, and then we had a inclusive intimates company from Reno, Nevada, so that was really interesting. A company from Atlanta who focuses on protecting artist rights, so kind of music rights and collaboration. So that was a really interesting one. She has one of her team members was the producer on Slim Shady, so she's got some like hard-hitting musicians on her team, which was pretty amazing. And yeah, so kind of a really broad array, but all like really tenacious, amazing founders that we kind of had the joy of working with over 6 weeks.
Yeah, that's exciting and pretty diverse.
Yeah, like all across the map.
Right. So there's no, so you guys are more focused on those, the team and sort of the business and opportunity itself, not necessarily like specific trend or tech trends or other areas?
No, for us, we didn't have, part of what we were matching for, so part of the program is founders get paired with a coach who is a former operator, now professional investor. Right. So part of what we were matching for is like, who are our coaches and who are they well equipped to support? So that was part of our selection process. That really has nothing to do with there was like an amazing med tech company that applied who I was like, oh my gosh, this founder is incredible. Like she's going to go so far. But when I was looking at the resources that we had, in FFAs like Investor Network and kind of in our coaches, I was like, gosh, I don't really know that we're the best people to help her. And so in the end, we didn't admit her. And similarly, we're out here in Boston and New York, like really developing our network and building connections with the communities in those cities because we want to be able to support founders in different places. And there were some really cool New York companies that applied who we decided to not bring in because we were like, you know what, you're amazing, but we shouldn't take your time and then not deliver on our end in terms of being able to have kind of the right support to help you level up. So.
Right. Okay. So yeah, as you're expanding to these other areas, what's the sort of growth path of FFA? Like, what are you looking to launch and roll out?
Yeah, I think, part of it is our events. Yeah. And, we see that as a really great way to actually build real connection with people. So the events that we run, they're not like mega conferences like the 5,000 person Startup Grind conference, which sounds amazing. They're pretty intimate events. Like there are 75, 100 founders that we bring together, and that allows for us to like really build authentic relationships between founders, which I think is super important for the way our community works. And then it also allows for founders to actually connect with the investors that we bring in, so that the ratio of, like, we always kind of pride ourselves on the ratio of speakers and people who are supporting founders to founders. And I think at our last Seattle event, that ratio, I think it was like 2 to 1. So like every founder there, had, like 1 to 2, one speaker to 2 founders. So just a lot of resources there that we bring in. So our events is, one of the great ways that we like to build real connections with founders. And then, we also run, because we can't be physically, all over, and because people's time is really precious. Like we start with this kind of pure truth that in general, like women and non-binary founders are the busiest people we know because they're trying to build their company, which very, very hard. They're probably out trying to fundraise, or maybe they have some kind of side hustle to help pay the bills. And then they also have their responsibilities at home. And so we try and meet, try and tailor our programming and meet founders wherever they are. So we do online forums as well. And so that's like a way that people can get connected and, learn about the space, learn about, the investment landscape. And then our founder community, we have, like I mentioned, about 600 founders who are in the community, and those founders connect with each other. Like I think one of the most powerful things about the FFA network and community is that, like, whatever problem you're facing as a founder, like there's definitely somebody in the FFA community that has experienced that. And so we have an online Facebook group that's like the original Facebook group that Leslie started that still exists. And people go in there. There's no investors in there. It's like a non-judgmental space where people really do ask each other anything and people help each other out. And that's really amazing to kind of experience and witness because there's just like magic that happens. And we only see a fraction of it because people go and build connections offline, they meet up, they have coffee, like it's really, really special. And when we go to our events, like we often find where people are like, oh, you're that person? Like they've been connecting.
Oh, the one who posted it, yeah.
Yeah, so that's really special. And I think one of the other things that, for us, like growth is important, and having high quality, like really companies that are really fit within our target is also important. So we've kind of focused on venture scale founders, and there are a lot of founder communities out there that support like all the different types of founders that exist. And myself having been a female founder of a non-venture scale company, like I know that there are challenges that are different for that journey than what founders who are trying to build and scale a company with venture backing. So like as we grow and expand, like we also want to remain really targeted in the companies that we serve because that allows us to just stay focused, right? Like we can't be everything to everyone. So that's like always this thing. I'm like, okay, quantity is great. Like we want to support more founders and bring our programming to more people, but we also need to make sure that it's staying really true to our center. Otherwise, we'll just dilute our efforts. And
yeah, that makes sense.
Make a difference. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a couple more questions, but I wanted to open it up to anybody in the audience that has some questions. Yeah.
So my question for you is this. So you said that you were part of a non-venture scale company, and then now you're into this world. So what were the tools that you used to, I guess, better educate yourself in this world? Like, did you know how to talk to investors? Did you know what you need to prepare, like how to prepare, other founders to who are being introduced into this world? Like, what did you do? What were the resources you used? What podcasts did you listen to?
Yeah. That is a really good question. I lucked into kind of coming to this community like FFA that is full of really great resources. So when I started, I just went out and met with as many founders that would have coffee with me in our community. And that was a really great way to make sure that I could start to understand what their journey is like, having not been in their exact shoes. Like I've started a business, I've run a business, I've led a team. Like there are all these things about operating that I know really well. And then there are certain things that I don't know well. So I really relied on our community to teach me about that. And then I also just like signed up to every newsletter that I possibly could, and really started like reading as much as I can in the space. In terms of the investor side of things, like I think a lot of it is listening very carefully to what investors are saying. Like I think that they're actually really transparent in my experience of them. Like they really are sharing like fully honestly what they believe and what they're looking for. And it can be hard to like remove judgment from that. So I try and just like really listen to what they're saying and ask more questions. I don't have like a really great podcast recommendation off the top of my head, but I did read Venture Deals. Like that's, if you've heard of that book by Brett Feld and I can't remember the other guy's name. But that's a great resource that I find myself like as I learn more and more going back to and rereading because I'm like, oh, there are nuances to this that I am still exploring and understanding. So, and I don't feel like I have it all figured out by any stretch of the imagination. Like I'm still learning every day. Like, and that's part of what's really exciting to me about this role.
Yeah, I'm thinking a little bit because I think it's really cool what you're doing with this sort of, like building up the competencies, things like this. But the fact of the matter is that, 2.3% of all VC capital goes to women. So I'm thinking a little bit like, how do you guys tackle the biases and like all of these things? And like a little background story, I just got out of the Holt Prize, which is like one of the biggest accelerators for impact startups in the world. And when it came to picking, thank you. When it came to picking, so we made it to top 40 teams. They had teams from all over, like a Harvard team and like an Oxford team and a Cambridge team, all filled with women. And when they came to picking the top 6 teams, they picked 17 guys and 3 girls out of the 40-60 balance among the group, which is not balanced. And they said no to the Harvard team, said no to the Cambridge team. So like nobody's telling me that it is the competencies there that are in the way. So I'm just wondering, what is it that you guys do that, you know, kind of, I don't know, counters this somehow, or I don't know, addresses it at least?
It's a great question. Like, I think bias in this space is really, I mean, it's rampant. And I think the more I listen and pay attention, like the more permutations I see of it. So for FFA, like, we alone are definitely not going to solve that. There's broad societal things that, you know, are at play. And so there are times where I feel like very hopeless about it, where I'm like, oh my gosh, how could we ever make any progress? The stats are terrible. You look around, like it's 2019 and there are no women on the most innovative, you know, company or founders list, or like stuff like that still happens. There was one. Okay, great. Good job. She was very, very innovative. So yeah, there are times where I kind of swing between feeling like, how is this solvable? And then there are other times where, you know, when I sit down with people in our community or sit down with investors and just talk to them face to face, like that is when I feel like I can get through and talk to somebody about these things. So a lot of how we approach this is by collaborating with people and like just having real conversations face to face. And it's a tricky place that we sit in because nobody wants to be beat over the head with, you know, some message around how they're biased. And the reality is, like, we are all biased. So we always have to find kind of slow and steady ways to be talking openly about the different ways that people are biased, and find ways to challenge people's thinking that is not gonna put somebody on the defensive. And, you know, part of the, I don't know, just from where FFA sits, like one of the challenges we have is we, you know, if we are perceived as being really angry, right, or really sanctimonious, like nobody's gonna wanna work with us. Like, nobody really wants to come and sit down at the table. And then alongside that, like, who controls most of the money, like the most senior leadership, like, so we have to find ways to collaborate with people who, you know, in some ways may have been, you know, the worst perpetrators in the past, or not the worst, but who, you know, who are definitely being biased in their thinking and have not yet realized it. The mentality that we have around this collaboration is just recognizing that, like, everyone is on a journey. And, you know, when we evaluate whether we're gonna work with somebody or whether we're gonna invite somebody to be at an event, like, we're looking at, hey, are they on the trajectory? Right, because everybody is on some trajectory. And if you only decide to work with the people who are over here and who you deem are perfect, like, well, 2 years are gonna go by and turns out like this is the new target and now they're no good. Or who knows, you know, like things can constantly be changing. So ultimately that's what we go back to. It's like, all right, is somebody applying real effort? Are they listening? Are they moving in the same direction that we are? And no one's perfect. I'm not perfect. None of us is perfect. So, you know, whenever we can, we try and meet people where they are and like bring them along our journey. It's complicated, and we like have these long debates in the office sometimes where I'm like, oh my gosh, like, is this okay? Here's a you know, fund that has never invested in a woman. Right? Like, there are no female-founded companies in their portfolio. Like, should we invite that? You know, and they want to come and meet with founders at our event. Like, Okay, well, we have a lot of female founders at our event. Are we going to prevent them from having access to those female founders and say like, no, you can't come because you've never done it before? Or, have they been a bad actor in such a way that we're like, okay, clearly, you've invested in hundreds and none of them has been, so these are real debates that we have that, I feel like I still don't know the exact right answer, but I think the important part is asking those questions and trying to figure out where people are headed.
Planting the seeds.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Cool. I just wanted to, ask, like, so there's, a variety of, or there's some founders in the audience, like, either from your own experiences or from the startups you worked with, what sort of advice, like, would you give on, somebody basically starting out that, something they should definitely consider and, go for and like launching their own venture that they might not think of, or you might not have known without working with some of the companies in the Female Founders Alliance?
I think the biggest thing that stands out to me that I kind of didn't realize before joining this role is just that, there are these uncontrollables that create your context, right? Like the market that you choose to play in, and being really intentional and clear about that. Like knowing that, okay, I chose to start an ultimate frisbee apparel company, and that is not a really big market. So we were not going to become like this mega, we're not going to be the next Burton, right? Like Burton has a much more significant market than we could as an ultimate company. So, but at the time when I was starting the company, I was like in college and not really thinking about that. But it's become really apparent to me just in working with the investors that I work with that, that's like the first thing they're looking at. Like, okay, what's the market that you're in, and is it growing, and how big is it? And I think sometimes like when we follow our passions, if your passion happens to be in a certain market that isn't big enough to, be venture backable, great, go for it, but don't kind of conflict the two. Just go in eyes wide open, like, all right, this is not a big enough market, and I'm super passionate about it, so I'm gonna go down this path rather than, trying to kind of fit a square peg into a round hole.
Yeah, that's great advice, and really appreciate all the insight here tonight. Yeah, let's give a round of applause.